Welcome everyone to What the Fiction and our show Fem-Gaze-On-Main, where we are covering The King, the Eternal Monarch, episodes 5 through 8. And with me is Nat.
Hi, I'm Nat. Also, Ashes for Foxes on Twitter. You also might know me from my podcast, Meta Machina.
And also Caitlin Plesher, who is joining us very randomly as I message her because Ty is sick.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin from at Caitlin Plusher on Twitter or Sky Talkers podcast too. And I'm excited to be here. I'm sad that Ty isn't feeling well, but I'm excited to talk about the show. And Ty, if you're watching, I hope you feel better real soon.
We were looking forward to having an opportunity to have you on here, and we just didn't think it would be so soon. All right. So let's get into it. I have a glorious PowerPoint presentation to share out with everyone. So let's get that started.
Apologies for the early morning PowerPoint put together.
All right. Welcome to the King, the Eternal Monarch.
We saw a shoulder. People have been very excited about that. So I had to include that picture because I found it like in my late night forum scrubbing. And we're, you don't get to see very much of Lee Min-ho's body, but the shoulder.
And it's worth it. It's worth it.
Exactly. All right. Important correction. Let's go into this one. What is going on with this one?
Okay, so this is a very hotly contested debate online in regards to the use of gender. But because of the Netflix subtitling and because of some text that was on screen, we are going to refer to Maximus from now on as a she, her, or they, if you'd like to use those pronouns. Again, we don't really care how Maximus is like, what sex they are. We're just going to go with the gender as she. We also recognize that she is very tired because she's 25 years old. And in that horse years, that's, I guess, between 55 and 70. So no wonder her blood pressure is high every time she has to cross between realms. I would probably feel the same way.
How long do horses live?
30 years. 30 years, apparently. Yeah, so he's just putting her through the ringer and she just wants to relax and eat some grass, hang
out in the pasture, and she's having to cross dimensions.
Yeah.
So
but maybe she's like locked in that ageless cycle that Lee Lim or probably Lee Gon is now. We're gonna assume she's eternal. So
she I mean, mystically speaking, she was like born at the same time as the king, and so like there's something weird about their relationship.
She's a magic horse. We're going to just
and he's a magic princey king horsey girl.
King Arthur.
Too. Yes. Maybe Maximus came from the in-between.
Oh, the in-between. Yeah, lots of people have names for it. I can't wait to get into that whole discussion about what that is. All right. Important subject of discussion, the beheading counts.
Yeah, I mean, number one, we have a really great beheading count tracker now, thanks to our friend Mallory, right?
Melody, yep.
Melody, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. She's been tracking it behind the scenes and counts all the threats of beheading, basically.
Yes. And there are many. And it's not just threats, it's also mentions. I didn't get to include all of them. I just included a few of the ones that we've seen, but we'll talk about those soon. I also, of course, want to talk about the romance since it's developing like spring blossoms in bloom. We've, gotten I love you. We got a kiss in these last 4 episodes. So.
Yep.
A lot has happened.
A lot has happened.
There is a lot going on, and they've introduced a lot of thematic elements too, which is really, really interesting. And I've been thinking about the show differently. And we were just discussing before the show, like how it's landing with us. And I'm really appreciating it. I know other people are like a little like more on the fence, but yeah, there's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we might have a little bit of salt, but we'll try to keep it as minimal as possible because the show is just continuing on as it is, and we don't know where it's going yet.
Yeah, we have no idea yet.
None, absolutely none.
Yeah.
And then I love your last point here. Lee Min-ho smiling.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty stoic for the first 4 episodes. So to see him, burst out into sunshine every time, he sees his woman talking or sees his woman, it's nice. It's good.
And the fact that now she knows that he's actually the king. He's
yeah.
like, yes, I've been waiting for this.
Yeah.
Like, look how cool I am.
Oh yeah, when he took her on those boats, like all the way up to the palace, he was like, hell yeah.
It was such the intro to like a Wattpad fan fiction where it's like, your name. He takes you on a boat and takes you to his palace.
Exactly. All right, our next one, the beheading count.
Yes.
So thank you again to Melody for contributing to this. And she messaged me. She's like, is it okay if I start keeping a beheading count doc? And I'll just share it out with you. And I shared it out with the girls. And it's really, really funny that this is a thing.
It's very important. It is a constant. I am at a tracker of 1 per episode. We have 8 episodes, 8 threats of beheading. And I think that there's actually more mentions than that. It's just that's the the direct cause here. I swear it's once per episode. I feel like it's like contractually obligated.
Very much so, yeah.
It's just so specific, and I really enjoy it. Like going through the whole list of possible ways of execution, they were like, let's go with beheading and let's really go with it. Just like keep that line through the entire show. And I mentioned before we started, I was like, I wonder if we'll actually get to see like an old guillotine somewhere in the kingdom of Korea. I think it would just add to the humor, I think.
I hope so. I hope the people have one too. So.
And it's become a mini like flirtatious joke between our detective and King, like a little bit. Like she's like, oh, I'm going to get beheaded. Got to make sure that I'm there.
Yeah. And it seems to be kind of flirty between him and his lieutenant too. So, I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of developing bromance / whatever that is with the lieutenant, with his unbreakable sword. It's become like this massive thing. I
very encouraged by the writers, apparently. So
yes. Making sure that it is part of the conversation and that it is definitely considered. And
our lowest moment comes next here.
Product placement, and we need to talk about this just briefly because of the fact that it is like such a massive thing in K-dramas, and the fact that we now see it so prominent, like so much in there, that we need to actually like talk about it a little bit.
Now, there's a lot of drama online about it too. Not only, Korean audiences, but also American audiences. And I know American audiences don't really, or even international audiences, they understand that that's a component of K-dramas, but the overtness of it in the last 2 episodes was a little bit too much for some people.
Yeah. It got awkward.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was. I remember that was something that I really wasn't used to when I first started watching Asian dramas, and I was like, they're really zooming in on that water bottle like a lot. Like, what's going on with that? Why? And then like you said, you realize that that's kind of how they just do it in these Asian dramas. But these past 2 episodes have just been really over the top, and I'm like, this is too much even for a Korean drama. Like, I get that we're supposed to go to Subway every other episode, but come on, guys, like let's tone it down just a smidge.
Yeah,
and it's almost like it's almost impossible to tone it down. It feels like they see what I struggle with is that it feels like sometimes in these dramas they shove them all in the same episode just to like get them out of the way in a way. And that's, even though these weren't all in the same episode, they were like in the same weekend, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it just felt very overwhelming, especially the one that you've got up, Nat, about the face balm that's like lip balm.
Oh yeah.
And then also...
I'm sold on that. I kind of want one.
So it worked. So
yeah, it did. Yeah, and the kimchi in the single serving packets, because I would love that. So my grandma doesn't complain that my jar in the fridge is too smelly. You know, like I love kimchi. So, but yeah, it was especially like the when he's talking to her on the phone, and I have the quote up that somebody was nice enough to. I put the credit for the article on that, but it's just hilarious how he is annoying her by talking about how the cold brew coffee they've been drinking the entire show is as good as the coffee that he gets in the palace, apparently. Oh my God.
And like quotes a commercial from it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And he did that for the bakery and earlier on in the show too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very odd. It is what it is. I don't know what else to say other than, you know, the show is doing what it can, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's tongue in cheek, which is good. That's fine. You know, as I think it's much better, say, than like the more kind of insidious stuff that we have here in the Western kind of media, where it's like product placement for the military, but we're not going to say that. We're just going to throw it at your face. You know, I guess I'll take fried chicken over that, you know? So
yeah. And like it could be, you know, some of the stuff we get in C-dramas especially, which is very is a little bit of a different flavor as well. So it's I don't know. I
don't know.
I don't know. It seems like, you know, people got to pay for stuff, and maybe it's just because we just don't notice it as much in our media, but there's tons of product placement in North American media. So it just feels very odd because they like hold the bottles and they're like, this is the best light, and they like make sure to talk about it just feels like very in ad. Yeah.
My favorite is when they're giving presents to each other randomly and they're like, look, I got you this beautiful skincare gift box set, and you see a glamour shot of the gift box set and you're like, what are we celebrating here? But that's it. It's just a present moment.
Yes.
Like I want to engage. The worst one that I saw was actually not worst, but just like the awkward one was when in Meteor Garden.
The whole last episode.
Yeah, the whole last episode, but also like when he wants to like make a good impression on like her mom, he brings her like all of this like, you could be beautiful. like that's actually kind of insulting. I don't know.
It is extremely insulting.
Like, what are you trying to do here? Yeah, it was just a little weird. All right, time to talk about fan theories and meta and the mirror universe mythos. And
yeah, we're not going to get too into this. I really plan next episode when we go into the last arc our next stream, I should say. Yeah. I'm going to do a breakdown of current fan theories and where they stand and where they might lead to, but obviously with the information from the next 4 episodes, because I feel halfway through, we're still getting a lot of information. People are processing it.
Yeah.
The forums are going at the speed of light in regards to posting their own fan theories. And as a kind of meta writer myself, you know, like I am seeing people come up with some really brilliant, but also really out there stuff. Like it's tinfoil hat time in the fandom. So that's why I've got, you know, we got red strings, we got tinfoil hats, we've got all of that. But I think my favorites are that people are really breaking down, you know, the idea that this is essentially a mirror universe. Everything is reflected and opposite of, and we're finding that more and more with the, you know, introduction of the doppelgangers. And as we kind of learn more of the history of this and how many people have crossed over, which is just new information, but overwhelmingly cool.
And how Lee Lim, the evil Uncle Prince, talks to the people that are in our universe he's like, this is hell. Don't you see it?
Yeah.
You know?
And how much does that have to do with like the way that history played out for the Kingdom of Korea versus in the Republic of Korea? You know, what's the differences? There's probably some really amazing analysis that can come out of this eventually around, you know, those historical differences. And I've seen some people, you know, go through like a historical timeline and stuff, but it's still so nebulous that we don't have all the information. So I think it's best left to later on to talk about that. But I do want to point out that people have been doing some crazy stuff online in regards to this. And my favorite is this graph somebody drew of the Euler's number 0 and 1. As you know, as a STEM major, I can appreciate somebody was like, somebody check my math on this, but I've decided that this is where the space exists. And I'm like, you know, brilliant. Go ahead, please. Love it.
So I have a guy friend who's really into Chinese dramas and has gotten a little bit into Korean dramas. And I pitched this to him last night. I'm like, you really should watch this show. He's actually has a doctorate in physics. And he actually said, is this a Euler number thing? And I had no idea. And he also made a comparison to the Dark Tower as far as what I described. So
yeah.
You know, that's
multiple
really...
parallel universes is the Dark Tower. So that's kind of with a base where you can pass through like a wheel, really, basically, with different spokes. So I think that that's very similar. We've only seen 2 universes, but who says that, you know, that's the limit? Because obviously that space between goes far. And, you know, we've continued to get this information that really like gives you brainworms because it's so big, right? Like the concept that was introduced where, you know, Lee Gon's character in this universe's mom was like, I can't die. They keep bringing me back. Well, what does that mean? You know, and then the time travel, which is very much lampshaded by the fact that, you know, our detective has a phone case with Back to the Future on it. So what does that mean? You know, and then,
And he's like an exceptional shot. And we, you know, spoilers for when we go into the episodes themselves, but we find out he's actually not from our world. So there's a lot going on.
Are you talking about Shinjae?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was really surprising. I really liked that reveal. I feel like sometimes with this show so far, it kind of goes in fits and starts as far as talking about these parallel universes. And it was like being in that world between worlds. I was like, when are we going back? I want to see more. And it's really intriguing, though, like all the possibilities that there are for it. Like when the king is telling the detective about, you know, I'm going to find the end of this one day. And I'm like, great, let's go back. Let's explore. What are we doing?
Exactly.
I really, with the mom, too, and they keep bringing me back. They're just laying so many fascinating seeds, and it's like this could go in a million directions, and we have 8 episodes left.
Yeah.
Is there time?
Keep opening more Pandora's boxes, and I mean eventually they're gonna have to just continue on with the one thing, but knowing the way that she writes dramas, there is a possibility that we'll get a complete twist, and the people are trying to anticipate it, and that's where you're getting a lot of that fan theorizing online. So
Yep. All right, let's talk about doppelgangers, because this is a large part of the show, especially it has developed a lot in these last 4 episodes, and wow, there is a lot to keep track of now.
Can I just say I just love Luna. I knew I was going to love her because she's going to be the dark half of like the main character, but the fact that she's just so, I don't know, like it's so great to see the actress being able to play a different role, and she really nailed it. And I just felt like, and I know a little bit more like spoilers I'm not going to get into right now, we can talk about them later, but her character's self-destruction is just really fascinating to me to see.
Yep. Oh goodness, who have I really enjoyed? I mean, we in episode 4 we've had a lot of focus on unbreakable swords, and our boys in both realm, because they got to meet each other and have that experience. But I've also really appreciated there's something that I was going to bring up when we got to this episode, but the moment where his bodyguard is like, am I in love with you or are you in love with me in this? Like,
oh, I love that so much. There's two ships and they're getting crossed over. It's awesome.
It's really trippy.
It's really trippy. But also like just this discovery that and in universe there's this conversation about like they even had this very meta conversation where it's like, well, only one can live, you know, and we're gonna get into that in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially because some of the doppelgangers have been killed already before like the king even knew that this world existed. It is really interesting. The crossover ships though is just where else does this kind of stuff happen?
Yeah, I get the best of both worlds, really.
I can only think of it like happening like in a single universe location, like Miraculous Ladybug fandom, where they love each other in their different forms because like they love each other as superheroes or not, and they actually call it shipping foursquared. It's bizarro, but
it's like a Batman Catwoman kind of situation too.
Yes. Do I love you as Selena Kyle, etc. But in this way, it's like, which version of yourself is like quote unquote the best version of yourself, but is that actually the best version of yourself? There's a lot of really interesting questions being brought up by this show, and I'm gonna have to like puzzle on it probably after the end and just be like, okay, what were you trying to say, and were you successful?
Yeah, we gotta see if those ships actually sail, which is like tough,
but I think the conversation about like fate is really interesting in this show in particular, with the addition of the doppelgangers. And Taeul was really talking about that when she told are we allowed to talk about spoilers, like the episode?
Yeah.
Okay, like when she told him that she loved him, right? And she has this whole kind of inner monologue about, it's my destiny, but like for some reason I feel really sad in this moment, like what's going to come down the line. And then the fact that the king hasn't really told her yet about the nature of her doppelganger and kind of what that's going to do to her. And then of course, like having the comedic side with the two detectives, or the two unbreakable swords. And that's just comedic gold, right? But they're playing with these really big ideas of, like you were saying, MC, like, what is your best self? Who is your best self? Can you change it? And all of them like looking for their respective family members that they've lost to in the other world.
That's
is really interesting too.
Yeah. And then also talking about this theme of balance and how these people that have been kind of whispered in the ear by the devil, Lee Lim, right? Because he does these like devil bargains, kind of, right? He's like, I can offer
all Faustian.
you. Yeah, it's very Faustian. But they've all been convinced that the balance means to destroy the other part of themselves. Right? It was quote unquote successful really version.
Yeah. His where is he when he's in the Kingdom of Korea? It's like a studio. I don't even know what he's doing.
He's like
there.
in an art studio because there's like paints. Then he paints these like
temples.
Yeah, like
that's in our worlds in the Republic of Korea, I think, right? Because he just passed back over for the first time in a long time and got his umbrella from the Prime Minister's mom.
Yeah, but I remember that, like that whole scene, I just remember there's just like a ton of red, like the paint dripping, and it just it looks like blood, obviously, but it was, his whole setup is very chilling. Yeah, it is very much.
It's extremely chilling. Yeah, he's, and I like he, you know, it's called out explicitly in the text. I like to do things in advance. I like to be prepared. You know, like he has a long-term game. It's been 25 years without any kind of like outside event, anything stopping him. So whatever he's planning is going to happen. You know, they're not going to be able to stop the majority of whatever he's planning, but they're just going to have to, you know, find a way to deal with the setup that he's already created. It's a game of chess where somebody's played the game without you seeing the board for 25.
Without you even knowing that you were on the board.
Exactly. And you know, people have actually made that comparison to Through the Looking Glass, because that's exactly what Alice wanders into. She wanders into a chess game between the two queens, and it's already been going on.
Yeah. What's cool about the uncle and the king is that they're the only ones, like they don't have doppelgangers anymore. And so it ups the stakes where everyone else is doubled, and then they're the only ones who aren't, and they're also the only ones who are aware of things like when time stops.
Exactly. Yeah. Although the biggest fan theory right now is that, you know, his doppelganger is still alive and was raised by Lee Lim. That's the biggest one, and we don't know if that's true or not. But
I said that in in our first episode. I was like, I if I was him, I would keep his doppelganger alive and use him, because it just feels like something an evil person would do, because then you actually have to confront this version of yourself at some point, you know?
Yeah, but I hadn't read that theory, so now my mind is spinning with that.
Yeah, and we've got some good stuff in the chat going too, and I just want to call out the fact that, if you go back to the very beginning of the show, it's very interesting to see that you know, it opens with an interrogation between Lee Lim and Taeul, and it is, we don't know the time, we don't know what happened, but she's asking him, did you kill your brother? He's got blood on him, in the same way that he did when he was, you know, there's time stuff going on here, which is complicating everything even more than just the parallel universe switchover stuff.
And for us in this Western audience that are dealing with translations as well, it adds a layer of confusion. And so just be patient with yourselves. Like, it'll explain itself eventually. It's okay if we're a few steps behind, because we have to go through a filter to like understand the story too.
Yeah. And there's no point in trying to really work it out. Just have fun throwing everything at the wall and seeing what's
and enjoy it. And don't get like upset if we're totally wrong, because, you know, it could be multiple reasons why we're totally wrong.
I mean, we've been wrong before.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Humbling. All right. Let's move on. Okay, let's talk about this isn't a law of the universe. It's a writing necessity. Okay.
I just had to include this because I really felt like Nari, or I don't remember her name in the other world, Sung-ah, is like the writer self-insert. Like, not only is she breaking the fourth wall all the time by being like, oh, he's hot, and like and just being smart too at her job, like in terms of working for Lady No in the Kingdom of Korea. So, but I think this whole conversation was super important for, like, you know, just like, okay, we understand there's characters that understand the universe. A zombie movie where people don't know zombies exist. No, we've got people that understand that, you know, these tropes actually exist within our universe. And so they're prepared if they see somebody that looks exactly like them, you know, their mind isn't necessarily going to shut down and go, okay, well, you know, broken. It's going to be like, okay, well, what's going on here? Just like
what
the
does
king
this mean
figured
for
it
me?
out.
Yeah. They're just more aware.
Yeah, it's a self-aware universe, which is good, because it breaks down a lot of the kind of unnecessary stuff that happens in writing where you're trying to have everybody be shocked and upset by this information.
And taking time to convince people that it's real too.
Yeah. They skirt past that quite a bit.
Yep. All right. Let's start digging in. All right. I loved this stuff so much. So this is
the best part of these 4 episodes, for sure.
It's our 2 unbreakable swords. I love that you have the Spider-Man meme associated with them meeting, and, you know, one wanting to shoot the other, and then they constantly seem to be circling each other, and then he tries to use him in some ways to like get some other stuff done, and like just go off that.
Well, I mean, obviously I've already really loved his characters, period, with them getting them interacting, and just that whole moment where you see yourself and you're like, I'm more handsome than nobody told me.
No, his response where he's like, what do you mean no one told you that you're handsome? Of course we're handsome.
And that's like, he's hearing it, everybody's saying that he's handsome all the time, you know, like goes into who he is as a person. He's like, of course I'm handsome. I know it. Everybody tells me it.
How can nobody tell you? I love that you don't have a girlfriend, neither do you. Line too.
And they're
like,
oh.
Yeah.
And the whole like, I have a boyfriend, and he's like, oh, okay. And, you know, like, because obviously like that's something that he's considered. So I think that's, you know, that is good writing.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like, catch ya, you believed me. It's like, well, maybe they're and this is the character dynamic that makes me talk about that balance theme a lot more, because we have moments where, especially those who have had that Faustian deal, are like, no, the destruction is the only way of the other person so that I can live and be the best version of myself. Whereas there's some sort of weird understanding that both of these versions of him need to exist.
Yeah.
By like especially when he talks about like, am I in love with you or are you in love with me, with the secondary OTP, one true pairing love interest, there's something that they're getting to with this dynamic that's like, no, if you're a good person, you need to kind of realize that all of these different facets of yourself need to exist.
Yeah, you don't have to cancel yourself out. You can find that balance. I love that, in the episodes, Jo Young is like, when he's pretending to be Unsoup, he's like, he's adopting his like way of talking. He's like picked up on it. He's, he passes as him because of that.
Yeah.
But also he's just like, he asks him about his life. Like, are you, like, does she have a crush on you? Like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are these people? Oh, your parents stayed together and had more kids and mine got divorced, and like just kind of understanding like where, because this comes back to our detective musing about fate is the decisions that we make, and it's almost inevitable because of the decisions that we make, but then sometimes there's other things that we can't control in there. It just there's lots of really interesting things. Sorry, Caitlin, what were you about to say?
Oh no, that's okay. I kind of going back to Jo Young with, I think the OTP girl, her name is Nari in the Republic of Korea, right? Yeah. I really liked that we keep referencing this conversation of him saying, do I have a crush on you or do you have a crush on me? And I like how he's kind of bringing this conversation that he hasn't really allowed himself to have with her doppelganger in like his world. Yes. But he gets to talk about it with her in front of him. But he's smart enough to know that she has no idea what's going on, and that she's responding to him as if he was actually Yunsup. And again, like, okay, well, if Yunsup falls in love with Nari in this world, like if they both like each other, does that mean that I like her doppelganger? And that like I like how he's kind of working this out in a parallel universe.
He's processing like the bisexual disaster he is.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's like he can't bring himself to even address it in his world because he knows that she likes him. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But he hasn't really even allowed himself to entertain that idea of what that would mean. But I liked seeing him kind of break it, like take his guard down a little bit in this world and address it literally face to face, but also not really.
Yeah. I mean, he's devoted his entire life to his king. So he's never paused to think about, can I have a normal life? What would it be like if I had children around me? What would it be like if I had, a relationship with somebody that I haven't allowed myself to have because I'm devoted to my king? So it's...
Well, and this idea of like your best self too. And he's so put together and polished, but then like we were talking about the conversations about their families, like this version of him in this world has his parents are together and they love each other, and he has younger siblings and this girl that has a crush on him and that he also likes too. And it's like, oh, what is actually the better version?
Yeah.
I assumed it was me, but maybe it's not.
Yeah. And he can see how happy he is in this world, even though he's maybe not as successful or not as driven or not as capable. He's like, like you're happy and you're smiling and you're not like, how did you get there? I think he's just trying to do the math on that. Oh goodness, I love this. Okay, so like I know people have some problems with this show, but like these things like set my mind going. I love that it does this to me. Like it feels good to be like, oh, this show makes you question things. And whether it'll end up being like satisfying in the end, I hope so, but I really appreciate that these are just like questions that are just like as part of the plot they ask.
Yeah. It's character driven, even though there
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of plot and a lot of high concept stuff going on. You know, being able to go back to those quiet moments where you go to the characters themselves, and that's drama. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready to tackle episode 5?
Yeah.
All right.
Are we we can turn off the PowerPoint too. There's not any good images to share here.
Well, I'll go back to us in a quick moment, but I don't know. Let's just look at that kiss. and
oh my God, I've watched it in GIF form a lot. And you know, I love the fact that for me, drama kisses, like when I first watched it, I was very upset because I was like, oh, she's not responding. Like it always happens every time. But one of my favorite kisses of all time, the exact same thing happens. All I need to do is watch the first part of it and skip the part where they cut to her. So like, and then it's a good kiss.
And yeah, I think it's a cultural thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm usually with you, Nat. What I liked about this one is I felt like her reaction kind of worked with the conversation they were having.
Yes.
When I don't usually feel that way about these kinds of kisses where the lead girl just like sits there with her eyes open and is like, whoa, what's happening? It does get pretty old pretty fast. But I thought that their conversation with this kiss, when he was like, she's like, you never date anyone. He's like, oh, yeah, well, what did his line afterwards, he was like, well, what did the kiss prove? Did it prove that you're right or that I'm right? And I did think their conversation worked better with her reaction than what we usually see in these situations.
Yeah. And if she really didn't like it, she could have drop kicked him. Like she would have roundhouse kicked him in the face.
She's strong enough. It's like how she's strong enough in any way that you could measure to know that she would like, if she didn't want this to happen, it would be a completely different conversation. Yeah. All right. And our lovely faces are back, just in case you're wondering. All right. So this episode, to me, I have like so many notes on this episode because it felt like the speed of the show really took off, especially with introducing her to the king's world and like her grasping what was happening. There's this whole dynamic with Lady No trying to protect the king and how that plays out in almost like the power and the politics of the palace. There was a lot of P's there.
You mean the part where she told him that he couldn't visit her room in the middle of the night and then he did?
Yeah. And then Teo calls him out and he's like, well, I own the palace. And she's like, you still snuck in.
Yeah.
Exactly. I also like really loved that we got our over possessive unbreakable sword in this episode. Like that I don't know. I really love the dynamics that are built from a character perspective in this show, like where it puts people into these situations that they have to like challenge themselves. And so he goes immediately into like the fact-finding mission. Like this person can't possibly be this imaginary girlfriend that he's had his whole life that I've been dealing with my whole life. Like, like he can't possibly be right because if he's right about this, then
mind broken.
Well, also I have no leg to stand on when I say I have to protect him, you know, in a way. Like there's a little bit of that going on, and I appreciate that their relationship in this. Did you have any other standout moments that you really globbed onto with this?
This episode was definitely my favorite out of the 4 that we're going to be talking about. I loved her being in the Kingdom of Korea, them going around, her talking about trying to find her mom and with the prime minister and their like little cute date nights and stuff like that. And the intrigue of it all, I thought, and with the unbreakable sword kind of dealing with the fact that, oh, all of this was true. And we were talking about like the chessboard before, right? And like how Lee Rim has been playing this game and no one even knew that they were on the board. But the king he's known that something is coming. Like he's been aware of this game. He just wasn't even sure how to enter into it, really. And he's been telling, you know, the Unbreakable Sword about it this whole time. And it's like now they're both having to address that, oh wow, it's happening. And Lee Gon has of course believed in it this whole time, but I'm sure for Jo Young it's been a little like touch and go. He's like, yeah, I believe you because you're my best friend and my king and everything, but also, do I believe you? And then now it's finally literally also staring him face to face and having to confront it and then have her pull a gun on the king.
That was an intense moment. Yeah.
I feel for him.
Yeah, agreed entirely. I love that the relationship between her and Jo Young, because it's just like he's just like, who is this weird chick you pulled up, you know? And then obviously he finds out she's a criminal, and yeah. But my favorite parts really are where the basically the scene where she goes back to see if Shinjai exists in this universe. Because I'm kind of like really into Taiul and Shinjai because I think their relationship is really natural. It feels really natural. You know, whether they're friends or lovers or whatever, it doesn't really matter. I just feel like they have each other's back in every universe. And it's like that moment where they cross paths in different universes and they're just seen like, it's confusing at first because you're like, oh, why don't they notice each other? Is that his doppelganger? And then you're like, oh no, they're just in the same place at the same time, but in different worlds. And I just love that. And his conversation with his therapist, and people have been really upset because they feel like he's getting a lot of screen time that he doesn't deserve. But I honestly think that they're setting it up so that he is a key figure in this whole story. Obviously, we find that out when we get to episode 8. But
I wrote down because of like their relationship and over the course of like those 2 episodes that were last weekend, I wrote down he's definitely the gunman. There's no way he's not.
I'm kind of getting into agreement here with you, especially
And like when the ID card went missing, it had to do, and I wrote down that they showed these things in that, and it might be the next episode, I'm kind of confusing them, but it was when they were flashing to his background and what he was doing. And it is the next one, but it's when he's like this expert marksman and she's like, whoa, how did you and then also just kind of there's these things about him, and they've laid the groundwork so well over the past like 5 to 8 episodes here, where they're like, there's something that's not right. And it's like how back when The Matrix came out, you're like, wow, that was a really interesting concept when they talked about how like something's not right. You feel like something's not right in your brain. And The Matrix actually has a lot of Alice in Wonderland, White Rabbit stuff as well. So
a lot,
so it's like something's not right. Why is something not right? It just, they've been laying the groundwork very subtly, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's almost like he's at a different frequency than everyone else. Yeah, I feel like I was definitely on in the camp of he's been having too much screen time, because when I watch dramas, I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm here for the main couple, and I'm like, give me my time with them. That's what I signed up for. And this drama has been very different in that, because there are literally 2 of everyone, where like our time is very divided between 2 different worlds and 2 different doppelgangers, and like your relationship with one version of someone else and then your relationship with the other version of someone else too. Like there's a lot of time going to these different storylines. And so when he was getting so much backstory with just himself, I was like, what are we doing here? we have a lot of other avenues that, for me, at first I was thinking this is where we should be spending our time. But the payoff in the very last episode that we saw was definitely there. I almost kind of think that maybe it should have been a little earlier in the show, because now we're halfway through, and that's kind of been the weird thing with this drama, is the pacing. Like I said, it kind of goes in fits and starts. It will just like bombard you with information, and then we'll wait a really long time before the next like cycle of like cliffhangers, I suppose. But now that we're at
like
this
clarification, because like what they'll do is they'll do this like it's sometimes forward in time.
Yeah.
Where they have the meeting or this moment, this careful moment, and then they'll go back in time to explain like how they got there.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a really interesting choice, but it's hard to follow, I think, if you're already like doing it through a second language.
And they started the voiceovers too, which is like
like when they did I forget which episode it was, but when the episode ended with Ligon back in the Republic of Korea and Taeul like gives him this surprising hug or whatever, and you're like, oh my god, they're together again. And then the next episode, it takes I think 40 minutes for us to get back to that moment. I was like, oh my god. What are we doing?
What is going on? It's just like that weird edit that happened in the beginning of this episode where it was like they're immediately cutting to them in the world between worlds or whatever you call it. Oh shoot, that's a Star Wars term, but you know, so it's just like you half of the time you don't really know what's going on, and I'm just gonna say that. I said it's between 0 and 1.
Yeah, as Blindman Baldwin called it, 0.5.
It was but finally getting to the reveal that he's actually not from their world, or from like he's from the Kingdom of Korea. I really like, I'm totally on board with that, and I love the idea that they're kind of perhaps like these sleeper agents that they've been trying to raise up for his army and stuff like that for when he goes back. But it's surprising that he still didn't figure it out, but that it really just came from memories, and it's not that someone came and recruited him and started to tell him about this, but rather that he remembered it.
And that it was a fundamental moment of empathy too, right? Like he's remembering hearing Leon crying and wailing during his father's funeral rite. And I think that's just really important because he's like, you know, there's obviously that second lead tension of like, you come into my life, you screwed everything up, you took the person that I love the most away from me. But now we're going to get that, you know, really interesting, that's the true bromance, because it's not the one that's baked in, it's the one that he has to discover through, you know, learning more about how this is what's happening and why he should be concerned. And like he said, I'm your king, like if you're from my world, I'm your king. But you don't like, you know, they still have that like
tension,
equal relationship.
The empathy side of it is like the fact that he was in the Kingdom of Korea for that memory of watching Ligon mourn his father, and clearly like that affected him as a child. Like he responds and he's sitting on the sidewalk crying and everything like that. And now contrasted with how he feels about the person actually standing in front of him, that's a lot to take in. I don't envy his position.
And it seems like his entire life has been constructed around being like victimized in a way that knowing that he was inserted in there, well, there might be some machinations involved there, because like, you know, that's how you get somebody vulnerable to want to go and replace their other self or to go back to that world. So
And I actually question whether that other version of himself is actually still around in that other land, because
probably not.
I mean, we saw that his mother in the other land got pictures of him.
And she's in the palace, by the way. She's been shown to be one of the workers in the palace. This is something I missed.
I mean, he's replacing the prime minister's friend who's pregnant. Like he's replacing like Lee Lim is like doing his homework and like getting his pawns, and like they're all in place, and they're weird ninjas sometimes too. they work out on the weekends. They do calisthenics, like they're ready to go.
I can't imagine keeping track of 2 phones. Okay, let's just that's already too much for me.
I think that's been half of the challenge with this drama, is just keeping track of everyone and like, okay, what world are we in? Do we like you? Yes.
Maybe do some like subtle color grading or something like that.
That
Just
would help.
Yeah.
Like if they had changed color, because they were doing it for a while where they would like flash to the symbol, or they would flash to the flag, and then you're like, okay, establishment, great. I know where I am. I can keep track. But I think some of it might be purposeful so that you're wrapped up in like, who is this and what does this mean, and all of the emotion behind it. Because often what Lee Lim is doing is like manipulating people, and you're like, you know, well, does he only manipulate people on our side, like kind of like the devil, like offering the deal? But no, he's on both sides doing that, and that's just it.
I kind of, even though, you know, as an audience, we're seeing a lot more of Lee Rim's story and like spending time with him, I do still feel so much like Lee Gon at the end of the last episode when he was like, or I think it was the end of the last episode, and he was like, my uncle has crossed. Like he figured it out that when time stops, it means someone has gone in between the two worlds. And he's like, but was he leaving or was he going? And I'm sitting there like, yeah, was he leaving or was he going? I don't know.
Because he knows, like the evil uncle knows when the king is not in the palace, and so he knows, but he doesn't know. Like I appreciate the like game like theory stuff, like, okay, where is everybody kind of embedded into just the plot of this. It's just fascinating. I wasn't expecting this when we walked into.
Oh yeah, you know, I didn't sign up for this.
But thank you for making amazing meme.
I haven't been very good at it lately, but I'll get better.
All right, so I'm just gonna switch, and we're gonna pop up the episode 6, because we get to talk about the most amazing moment / things that happen in episode 6, not a sinking battleship in sight. This was okay, so
sorry, I had to
no, it's perfect, because I was trying to explain to Kyle, my husband, like, okay, what's going
ridiculous. The most ridiculous entry into this whole series for me is, I mean, it's great to show him as a king and having, you know, superiority, but it's just hilarious for me to see like the implications of international politics in a world where, you know, like the Japanese are still causing altercations in other countries. So
yeah, and like China's like a cool ally to have in that area. Like,
we'll let you come without a visa. We're great, you know.
Yeah,
we're awesome.
Because North Korea doesn't exist. We don't have the tension.
I mean, like it does feel a little like Star Trek opposite world. You know, like the Star Trek.
It is absolutely the Star Trek mirror universe. Like down to the fact that anybody in the other universe is sort of your real, true, like goatee wearing darker half, and like more prone to violence too, as we've seen. Like I feel like in our universe, we're the mirror universe that's bad.
Yeah, like when the prime minister got the newspaper with Donald Trump visiting North Korea, and she was like, "What's this?
What is this?
I was like,
fake news."
It's funny because I really liked the battleship sequence.
Yeah,
I can't explain it. I really felt the tension of it for some reason, even though I knew that it was probably just going to be a standoff in the end, and that because he was there, that suddenly that would make everything like okay. But seeing him like in the outfit and standing on this ship, it was like, I'm buying into this 100%. Like I like what I'm seeing on the screen right now.
It worked for me too.
Yeah.
And I'm very pro-Japanese, obviously. I studied Japanese. I went to Japan. I've lived there for a little while, you know, like I still think it's like, it's fun because again, it's just a speculative fiction, and like that's just let it ride or whatever. But I just thought it was so funny. I couldn't help but like laugh at the idea that they had, you know, this is how they're going to show that, you know, Korea is on top 10 in the world.
Well, like it's like top 5 GNP, or something like that.
Rare earth minerals.
I think they're the fourth.
Or fourth, yeah.
In one of the episodes, yeah.
What I also wanted to say, like there's like something about the mirror universe thing, but also that these things are there's something that they're trying to show us about how these things are connected. Because like the one moment the prime minister looks into her black mirror, her computer screen, and she sees the alternate version of herself. So
Yes.
there's something being said subtly in the storytelling at this point that they're inserting that is coming and bubbling to the surface as more and more crossovers are happening between both of them, that these things are not separate as we would assume. And I think,
it kind of makes you wonder if at a certain point the in-between will collapse and like the two sides won't be able to access each other anymore. And if there are other portals too.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Fringe, where the two universes started to kind of collide, and that caused a major disaster in the show. And like the idea of like, we see, you know, individual characters that we know experiencing these doppelganger flashes during these crossovers. We've seen it for every single one of the main characters at this point. But how limited is it to these people? Is it just because they have, you know, a face-to-face contact with the people that have crossed over, or is it universal, where there's suddenly, you know, hundreds or thousands or millions of people that are experiencing these flashes during this time, and it's causing this sort of like, you know, huge reaction, like butterflies and hurricanes, chaos theory stuff. You know, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I like the idea, like with the Kingdom of Korea. It makes me wonder how detailed they went into this what if scenario of, you know, if Korea hadn't ended up in the Korean War and there wasn't North and South Korea, then like how are we still dealing with, you know, things like Japan? How are things with China changed? Like just how expansive had they made this what if universe? And then comparing it, of course, to the reality that we're actually in. It's kind of similar to like Crash Landing on You. Like the way that they portrayed the North Korean government versus the South Korean government was like very specific. And what they're saying is very clear, but it's also an interesting tangent to kind of go down of, well, if the Korean War hadn't happened, maybe there would still be this animosity with Japan from Korea's perspective. And it just, I wonder what that writing process actually looked like.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you brought up Crash Landing on You, because I think a lot of the way that speculative fiction is going now is sort of, in a positive way, is rehabilitative of history, where they're like, well, if we didn't get into these huge, you know, international conflicts with these countries where we basically shut off all avenues to peace or justice or restoration or whatever, then what would the world look like if we were more, you know, less borders and more, you know, community, you know, like I think that's what they're trying to go for, is like, you know, just because countries are at war doesn't mean the people that are explicitly in them are, you know, bad or wrong or, you know, or evil. And I think that like that is a good way forward. And if it's, you know, especially since it's being done in like a fem-gaze context, because a lot of the way that we process things isn't just like, oh, these people are bad and the terrorists and we need to go shut them down. It's
we need to go and kill them because then it'll be done. But no, it's like, what are the consequences for my kids and for my family and for my country and for my community?
Yeah.
Breaking the cycles of violence, and especially being able to do that non-violently, which was demonstrated in this show to a certain degree with the conflict that happened. So I like that that's kind of, even though we still have a lot of like this military portrayal and this nationalism, which I kind of like shirk at because I'm not personally like a fan of it, but also if you're going to do it, if you know, you can have it, because obviously that's important to a lot of people, just do it in a way that is expressly peaceful and negotiative and, you know, trying to establish that. So
all right, let's although I do want to shout out for a moment, everybody loved the battle in the ocean. Like, as it felt
good,
it felt a little cheesy to me, but I appreciate the fact that they're trying to check off every genre in existence in this show,
every single genre. And they got a lot of flack for, I guess, one of the battleships being Japanese or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I don't go down those rabbit holes into culturally relevant drama on drama.
I only do that in Star Wars, not in something I really have no right to talk about.
Yeah, it was nice to just see him like on like outside, like on the ocean. I don't know. The bright sunshine. I don't know. It was
man
like,
in uniform.
right?
Yeah.
And they were like, we brought his flag. And I was like, oh my God, they brought his flag.
I'm going to hoist that up right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked that the Japanese like opposing force was like, oh, he's just gonna run away because he's there. I liked, and he was like, no, we're gonna win this. Like, it just it showed like the character of the country and like him as a leader, and that he is still the and weirdly it had a lot of like North Korean feeling, even though, like, you know what I'm saying, like if North Korea and South Korea were together and like they still had like a little bit of like pride in their military. I don't know. It's just, there was a lot of weird stuff that came out as as part of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole study on the fact that they're still pretty authoritarian, you know, like
mandatory military service. And,
but although, I mean,
the thing that kind of tripped me up with the whole naval battle, though, was the timing of it all. It was very intense, right? When the prime minister's in the, the control room and she's calling the king and everything like that. And he's like, I'm on my way. And then we do a very long shot of him like getting dressed, and he's like, please send in Seoul. And she comes in and they have this long conversation, and then
he drops her off in the bamboo forest. Like,
I know, I was like, did he go through with her? Did he just drop her off? I was like,
babe, I'm gonna drop you off on my way to this military engagement, this naval battle.
He ends up in the middle of the ocean near Japan. Like, I was like, whoa, how fast are these helicopters? It was just, he was so calm.
He's got that drama speed.
Dressing room, and I was like, aren't you like near wartime? It feels like imminent, and you're just, polishing your buttons.
Had time to get on a horse and plant some flowers and
long farewell through. Like, does he have to go all the way through with her?
No, because like we got the flashback in the next episode about what happened.
Oh yeah.
In that, and that's where it's like, to me, like the non-linear storytelling sometimes is confusing, but also like really interesting. So I give it a massive pass. Like, because I'm like, oh, this was really interesting. They took this moment to like have her remember what happened in that moment when they were there, but we didn't see it. And so we had an entire episode of like, how the hell did she get back? Like, that's always my thing. Like, I'm like, when did she get back? Who brought her? Did Unbreakable Sword drop her off? Like, I don't. Like,
does she have the thing now? No,
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So there was a lot of questions, but they answer them eventually. You just have to be patient. So I give a lot of latitude to this show. I don't know.
Yeah, give a lot of latitude to it for sure, because it's a romp. It's fun. It's a multi-genre explosion of drama.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to episode 7, where my favorite shot of these 4 episodes was Unbreakable Sword on the black horse and the king on the white horse.
Oh, it's so
it was so good. It's so specific. So good.
I loved it so much. I stared at that moment for a really long time. I don't know why. I just like him just trying to do his job, and he's like, well, I guess you're coming with me. By the way, I've already texted. You're going on vacation.
You're going on vacation. I'm gonna drop you off in another world.
You don't believe me? Well, I guess I gotta show you. Huh?
Yeah. It's like, oh, you're coming. Well, you're coming. You're coming.
Well, and now I'm like, there's this whole dynamic where he has Unbreakable Sword. Like, I really want to understand like how he felt about the king this whole time, when he's like, I'm in love with this woman that doesn't exist. I have gone to this other universe. Like, he literally does not believe a single word that he says, but he's like right the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and finding out about Luna too was just, Jae-young's like, no, this is Luna. She's just like, something is off here. I don't think you get it. But when really he was the one who didn't get it yet.
Yeah. And I really liked the whole, like, her trying to find, and maybe that was the last episode and I'm trying to confuse things, or yeah, it was the last episode where she like found, you know, all about what is the world now without her or with these differences. And then he gets to experience that in this episode, like with the discovery of his doppelganger and what is really going on, and that this is actually something that is not just this cutesy thing that is happening that's like, oh, you know, a mirror dimension exists. No, actually there's something sinister afoot as well.
Yeah, they found out that, you know, like his uncle is still alive, and this is an operation that they're now working on. And I think that's a good transition too, because at this point we really want to see them actively fighting back instead of just, you know, being in like unknown what's going on outside of their influence, right? So it's good because it changes the game halfway through the story. Now we are in war and we have to set up a base in this other world, and I need you to accept the fact that it exists, and also that you're going to have to fit in while somebody else is walking around with your face and a, you know, totally different haircut and style of speaking. And
yeah, Taeul finding the recording with the news playing from the Kingdom of Korea, I thought that was a really great moment and really intriguing too, about just how far reaching Lirim has made this whole thing and how they're communicating through these worlds, or even why they're communicating about these kinds of things. It's just those kinds of things I found the most interesting throughout this show, are these little seeds that they drop. Like I said, sometimes I do think that they're a little late in the game. Like, yeah, I kind of want these things to be happening like episode 6 rather than like 7 and 8. But that being said, I do enjoy where it's going.
Yeah.
There's so many bromance moments though in this episode.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's the show of bromance at this point. I love the shot where she sits on the ground in his apartment and then the two boys just sit on each side of her. Like, they did such a seamless job of editing those two together. Like, not two, obviously it's the same actor, but the fact that like it didn't feel for 1 second like they were not two separate people was just so good to me, because that just speaks the like volumes to like how they wrote it, how they set it up, and how Woo Do-han just like, oh, he's gonna shine, he better be a lead in something soon because I need it so bad.
Yeah, my gosh.
Yeah. And you know, having those kind of like sort of issues from a execution perspective will take you out of the moment, right? Yeah. But we believe it because they do such a good job of showing both of them together and cutting back and forth and having their different moments, and so we feel like the doppelgangers are real. And that was probably the hardest conceit to have happen in this show, is that making doppelgangers feel like they are actually different. And to your point, Nat, like they succeed.
Yeah, and even showing that Lee Gon believes it too when he's tricked that Woo Yun-sup actually is.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
That was awesome. Did you want to talk about Luna a little bit, Nat?
Yeah, I do want to talk about Luna. The best part of this, as far as I'm concerned, like, I mean, we don't really get like her full introduction in this. We get her at the end, and then we see her in the next episode. Like, spoilers, you know, she's sitting in an ice cream shop listening to The Cure, and then decks a guy in the head with a chair, like World of Wrestling style, just bam.
So intense.
Oh God, yeah. But as soon as she, like, her energy and like, God, I want to speak spoilers to the rest of the show, but I don't want to like do it without like having a major caveat.
Well, maybe we'll wait that until the end. And then
exactly. Yeah, I'll wait till the end, because I do have a lot of stuff from production that I'm bringing in here, and I'm trying to keep everybody yeah, I want you to discover it. I don't want you to have to like figure it out. But there's some really interesting stuff around her background and also her current state, and you get the idea that she is on a path of self-destruction. Okay, like it's clear from the show that she doesn't really have a concern for her life or like her security or safety, and she's like, I've got plenty of money, but I've got so many people that hate me, I don't really care. But yeah, just the complete ambivalence she has towards the world itself, and what is she actually doing? How is she involved with the bookstore and the little kid? And you know, she's obviously a stone cold killer, but she has empathy and she has a sense of something, but we don't quite know what it is, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, hers is definitely the most serious doppelganger. The switch between her and Seul is definitely the most alarming and serious, I think, for the show, whereas Yunsup and Jo-young is, like we've been talking about, it's very funny and they're obviously interacting a lot and stuff like that, but it really left me wondering, what is going to happen when Seul meets Luna. Yeah, it's like, I'm very intrigued. And yeah, seeing her in the ice cream shop, just telling that little kid, like, you should probably go because I'm going to kill that man over there.
Because he turned me in and he needs to die now. Just
he needs to live.
Crazy. I just have nothing but question marks associated with her because, like, she doesn't look like she looks like she hasn't slept in like 6 years. Yeah. Like she looks like me, like just not being able to sleep and like, no, just she looks burnt out. She doesn't look happy. There's a whole lot of like that going on. And so it's like, what has given her that life? And then also there's, she is the rabbit in the moon, and they brought it up that this episode, like, do you have that, or the episode before, do you have that, mythology about the rabbit in the moon? And it's like, suddenly we have Luna, who's a rabbit wearing hoodie person. Like, so I can definitely see where people are getting that mythic parallel from.
Well, I had kind of thought when the show first started in the first like 4 episodes or something, I had kind of thought that Seul was kind of this anomaly to the doppelganger situation, and that she didn't have one in the beginning, and that was kind of her draw to Li Gon and everything like that they kind of stood out as not having doppelgangers, but obviously that's been disproven. But I think that it's a really interesting move to have Luna be the one that kind of drew Li Gon really into this in the beginning, even though that's not really Seul. And where is Luna actually going to fit into this bigger picture by the end of the story? Because as of right now, she seems pretty disconnected from everything else that's going on. She's kind of slowly getting brought into it more, like with the bookshop and with the prime minister, and the prime minister's like, WTF is going on? Like, we've definitely met before. But she's still like seeing how she's going to fit into this final battle at the end for the Kingdom of Korea. I'm really interested in that, especially given, what Nat was talking about with, on this path of self-destruction, who is she actually going to care about? Is she going to be someone that actually wants to kill Seul and take over her life? Like, it seems like Luna could definitely be on that track. Like, that could probably look really attractive to her, I think.
And is she already being manipulated by, evil prince uncle?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I have nothing but question marks, but I'm interested for them to reveal and show me more,
Yeah, I do think she's heavily involved with the uncle. I just don't know the complete specifics of it, or if she's being manipulated. Mostly it's just about the fact that she's working through the bookstore. She's involved with a lot of the kind of shady side. Everybody knows who she is. So she's very well connected and has been for a long time. And that's part of the mystery there that I will keep my spoilers to myself.
All right.
And is she aware of the other world? No, Interesting.
Yeah.
Episode 8, the plot thickens.
I apologize if some of my pictures are out of order or anything like that.
It's okay.
The episodes like creep together because
they overlap, because you'll see a scene that takes place later on, but we see it early on, and and then they go back and tell all, like, it's a non-linear show in some ways, so it's okay. We're just trying to talk about kind of what's happening, but we get more insight into our big teddy bear of a detective in this show.
When he was hugging that, when he was like the scent like that he like put on the blankets or the blankets that he bought like online or whatever in the
and he brought a lavender flower like smelling candle for him, like
I just love
like, do you always sleep like this? And he's like, yes.
Yeah, Jamie. Oh, he's the biggest, sweetest, softest boy.
Yeah.
And we have, you know, our continuing bromance with that switch out doppelganger, like fight moment thing where the king can take care of himself. He's just too good to.
Yeah. And he has a riding crop, you know, like just
that whole scene was just, it was so much. And then, you know, him being like, oh, well, you're back. Well, that's okay. I have my unbreakable sword here with me. Like, nothing's going to happen. And then it turns out to not be the unbreakable sword. And he's like,
fine, run away.
Absolute gold.
But then Jo Young talking down to the king after all of it was over and dragging him away, and their conversation afterward.
It hurt him physically to do it too, because when he's like, "You can kill me. I know you're gonna want to behead me. Like, thank you for your mercy."
Gives him a mole. I can't, like,
on the beauty mark. Yes.
I thought that was so he could tell them apart.
Yes.
It's like so funny.
And then,
but it's so kind of like skin chippy. It's like a little.
Yeah. And then Nari, I'm not pronouncing it. Nari wipes it off, and he's like, what?
He's
better. Like, oh my god, she touched me.
Mm-hmm. Nobody touches the unbreakable sword, but she did.
It was good. That whole sequence of events was some of the best parts, I think, of this set of episodes. I kind of thought that Jo Young would almost become more cavalier with the king after all of that had happened and be like, well, I gotta be on sub, so this is how we're gonna do it, and you have to listen to me, and here we go.
Exactly.
It was funny seeing him right when they got back to the hotel be like, yes, you can behead me, I'm sorry.
Punish me, master. And it's okay.
Yeah.
I like the fact that, like, he's like, I'm setting up a base, and thus it's like the most expensive hotel room in like that I could possibly get. And it's got like a kitchen. He's like, I'm walking to the kitchen, and it's like takes him like 3 minutes to get there. Like, it's just
what a drama queen diva. He is such a spoiled brat.
He brought so many diamonds with him this time.
Yeah,
gold and diamonds.
Literally.
And just like so much. He came prepped. He's like, gotta do this in style. I know we talked about this really early on in the show, but seeing our detective slowly uncover the layers of like what had happened to him and like putting the puzzle pieces into place where he's like, oh, I'm actually like, there's something wrong. And then him confronting them at the end was so good. Like, I loved it so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because now it's not just a duo of these two guys from the other universe. Now it's it's the three dudes. It's like the Three Musketeers, like, and they're all from the same place. So,
and how many more memories are going to be unearthed for him too?
Yeah. And really what happened there, his mom either has a huge amount of guilt about what happened and has been, instead of alcoholism, she's gone to like gambling. What happened there? What was her Faustian bargain where she was able to replace her son, or did she even know that the son was replaced? So there's some heavy stuff going on there, and obviously Shinjai is under watch from Li Lim, and he's going to be part of that. He's a pawn and he doesn't know it. So if you can, we're making him a knight now, but for the other side. So we'll see how this is going to play out.
Yeah. Like I definitely back in like episode 5 or 6, I was like, okay, he's going to be pulled in because he is of interest, but why is he of interest, and what is his thing? But they paid off, again, Caitlin, to your point that they spent so much time looking at his character, his background, showing us the weird flaws or issues in his life and how dissatisfied he was with certain aspects of it, and trying to figure out where the gaps were. And they did this really great thing where in episode 5, she's like crossing the road, and we see him crossing the road, but they're in the different dimensions. But that was to show us that there was actually something odd going on, I think. And again, there's a lot of this show that's very subtle, and we're not going to be able to maybe even recognize those things until we see later episodes.
I think you're right about the whole fate aspect. Like I should have known, knowing the writer, but I was kind of thinking, oh, they're going for the more science fiction side of it.
No.
But there's absolutely red string of fate. I mean, the yo-yo that they keep, like they were talking about fate, and then they showed the yo-yo with the red string, and I was like, okay, well, if you want to get on the nose and hit your audience in the face with a baseball bat with it, like this is how you do it. So we're there. I mean, we're showing that like no matter what universe you're in, your fates are intertwined. And so it's like it's definitely going for that predestination. There's bigger powers at work here, and just roll with it, because it worked in Goblin, so it can work here too.
Yeah, I like how there is more of this science aspect within this show than there was in Goblin.
Same.
I think that's a fun kind of twist on it, having someone like Ligon who can sit there and do Euler's number in the middle of this, and he can talk about it in that way. I think is a nice change. It has me really curious about when exactly Ligon and Teul's fates became intertwined, and you coming with this like time travel aspect that I assume we'll be getting into in the future when we go to the past.
Exactly.
But just when this crossover happened, if Teul is actually originally from the Republic of Korea, there's that possibility too. I think that's going to be really fun to see. And when Ligon kind of has to, in a way, abandon his science and math understanding in order to just lean into this, magic realm and whatever that's going to require of him by the end of it.
Yeah. A lot of people have been pointing out that he seems to have more knowledge than should be for where he's at. And I don't know if that's just because he's super smart, or, are we dealing with something where the time loop has influenced this current timeline that we're on? Because obviously there is an influence in the past, that's changed everything that happens in the future. And we know time travel sucks because it's so hard to parse out. It's you have to do that kind of mental math that nobody really wants to do when they're just shutting off their brain to watch a premiere television show. But it'll be really great to look back on it and to be able to tie those pieces together, especially as a wrap up for our final episodes. Once we have that bigger picture. And I'm really enjoying the ride more than I expected, because I honestly thought, based on my experiences with her dramas before, that it would definitely be more character focused. And while it does have that and retain that, and it does have the romance, it's not as slow. It's going. It's picked up. It just keeps going.
There's some really cool stuff. Yeah. I do want to just have a quick call out for the meta moment of the prime minister receiving the paper the second time and being like, well, fate's trying to tell me something. And then she reads it, and we have a couple of cool things. We have a Trump reference again. We have a BTS amazing moment. Caitlin, high five. Ty is not here for us.
Does BTS exist in the Kingdom of Korea?
I don't think it does.
I want to know.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
It can't be the better universe then.
That is the question. And then she sees herself. And that was such a good way to do that. And I really, really appreciated how that all came out. But there is this kind of mini meta commentary that's happening with certain characters in the show. And it's odd and aware, and back to the top of the show when we said that this show is self-aware.
Yeah, and I really like that we're going to probably see more of the prime minister. And a lot of the salt that I've seen online about her character is that she is sort of compartmentalized into that typical bitch, like no censorship, just say it, of a second female lead, the one that kind of tries to cause problems or get in the way of the main couple, who's just jealous and doesn't have her own story. And I do think that they've expanded it within the last few episodes where she does feel like a more realized character, whether it's seeing her and her mother, or seeing the way that, she still deals with institutional sexism in the Kingdom of Korea, but it would be a lot different if she was dealing with it in our world. And, like, she does have nuance to her. I do still have a little bit of salt about the way that she's written, because she is kind of one-dimensional, a little flat in a lot of ways. But that said, she might have the opportunity over time to develop a little bit more, especially knowing that there's another one of her that exists, and somebody she probably doesn't think of as being as successful and, good or whatever. What would you do if you saw, just like Joe Young sees, like, kind of dust up version of himself?
I mean, she sees a woman who's having fun at a like baseball game or some sort of sporting event, and she's like, whereas she kind of hates her friends.
She hates everybody.
She hates everybody. And she's like, why are you disturbing me during my private time? And she's got that weird face thing. Is that one of those products?
Yes, it's a product placement.
Okay. Yeah. I thought so. I was like, they keep on interrupting it. It seems weird if it's a product placement, but yeah. What is that?
She loves it.
What is that?
Lightens your skin?
It's a light therapy. So ultraviolet light therapy is pretty common in general for any kind of skin treatment. But don't know the specific product name, but I'm sure it's recognizable to Korean audiences. It's probably really expensive considering it's like pretty built in. Like those like standing ones are, when I worked in an industry that sold them, and they're like $200. So that's got to be even more than that. So
it looks expensive. It looks like it's for a prime minister. So
it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Her whole setup looks like it's for a prime minister. I gotta say, her fashion and her location that she this is her office or home. I don't know. It's
the white place.
I love it.
White. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just crazy.
Were there any other themes that you've noticed that have become incredibly prominent? Like, cause I had like balance and like what that means. We've got this fate idea that's kind of keeps on popping up. What is it? Is it our decisions, or is there something uncontrollable about how the universe works? What is your true self, and what are things that will always be true versus things that we have control over because of our decisions or because of things that happen? Yeah,
that big nature versus nurture conversation. Is so prominent. I think something that I've kind of been enjoying as like an undercurrent in this show is the topic of families. And it's like, I feel like we know about all of our characters' families, which I don't feel
so cool.
I don't feel like you see that in a lot of shows. And, even talking about the prime minister, seeing her mom and how all of that is connected, like all of these people, it's like the 6 degrees of Ligon and Lirem. Like they're all connected, and they're all kind of dealing with the trauma or the support of their families in different ways, which I think is pretty unique, even within dramas. Like usually within dramas, in Asian dramas, at least the ones that I've watched, like one person has a really strong family support system and the other person doesn't. Whereas this show, everyone has some kind of relationship to their family, whether it's good or bad. And even just kind of talking about the parallel between like Ligon and Shin-jae and their like parents, and how like Ligon also didn't grow up with his parents. To what degree are Shin-jae's mother in the Republic of Korea aware of this swap out, like not growing up with your true parents, but still feeling familial love for them? I don't know. I like how much we're learning about all of the characters, and I think it's pretty unique.
Yeah. The only salt I have about that is the fact that Ligon met Taeul's like dad and has the keys to the Taekwondo studio and everything like that, but they didn't show any of it, and we don't know. I want to see that conversation so badly. Like everybody's like, did the actor just have limited time? Did they cut the scenes? Like, that seems pretty important. But maybe it's maybe that those scenes are actually pretty pivotal, and that you find out like, yeah, I'm gonna marry your daughter. I just
by the way, I'm a king, but not here. Like,
he's like, yeah, you can have the keys. Go ahead, take her off my hands, please.
Well, everyone is so trusting of Ligon in the beginning, except for Taewol. So it just kind of flowed that, of course, he got the keys to the
Nari, like,
he had a horse,
thousands of dollars.
Maximus opens all the doors.
Literally.
If you have a horse, you can get away with anything. It's like having a dog and flirting with people.
Yeah. Nice to get a horse.
Have an expensive horse. That helps.
Yeah.
So I did want to talk about our bad guys plan, and I know that like we kind of talked about it a little bit when we were talking about the like multiple universe stuff a little bit, but I did want to. Okay, so where are we at? What is our bad guy planning? What does the chessboard look like?
I don't know.
So we know he has, been given these people, especially in our world, which seems like the crappy world, these like alternative choices, and it involves having 2 cell phones for a period of time to get used to. I think what they're doing is like listening to voicemails of the news in the Kingdom of Korea.
So like they showed the pregnant woman in the care facility listening in on all the information around the prime minister so that she could adapt herself to that world, because they didn't want them to have the tell, So if you're listening to the news all the time, but it's the other world's news, then you're more embedded in that universe. Yeah.
And she also, like, we find out that alternate, like, our universe care facility, the director is the prince, is the evil prince. So
yeah,
we learn that.
It's like a staging area for people, I think.
Yeah.
And also a way to conveniently get rid of people that have disabilities if you want to bring people from that universe into this world, which sounds horrible, but this is pretty much what he's doing, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's like a meat factory. It's really freaky. It's on a sci-fi level, it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And that's where I kind of get my like theories about what he's going to do either in our world or in that world is that, you just plant as many people loyal to you as possible in, these separate arenas so that no matter where, you can't escape, you can't go back to your worlds and everything fine. No, you're surrounded on all sides by people you can't trust. And that's exactly how they're setting it up with like the people in the palace that are obviously doppelgangers. And, it's a house of cards, but it's masterfully built. And it's the loyalty of having somebody come to you and say, your life is so horrible. You're desperate. You have no way out. You're basically at the point of suicide. Well, instead of killing yourself, kill yourself and take over. And because everybody's at that point.
There's also all these like metaphors to do with that. Like if your life is so bad here, and then, the other version of yourself has this like extremely good life, but really that life isn't that good. Like we see a little peek into that. Like everybody's life has different challenges, and
exactly,
like, especially with the pregnant woman who's super successful, like all of her friends are like, that's the moment that my husband started cheating on me. Like, oh,
it's a grass is greener, and the grass is definitely astroturf situation.
Yeah, like you think it's better, but is it? And we see that with the woman who's like, I've tried to die or whatever, and they just brought me back. Like,
I really am fascinated by her character, because she's
something. There's some cool. There's stuff.
That's a horror concept. You can tell that she's multiple times tried to take her own life, and because of like she was already in just such a horrible position and felt like she was free, and then that devil just walked out of the darkness and told her that her son was dead. Like, I can't imagine what she's been through. And I also kind of wonder what kind of relationship she'll have to Ligon when she meets him, because I'm sure those characters will collide, because that is the face of his mother, and if not his real mother, the face of his mother. And it's going to be a really interesting thing for that to happen.
It's interesting that they're they do that delineation where they say, like, he had that argument with Unbreakable Sword. I suck at people's names, so that's why I use their like monikers. I apologize, but where he's like, no, that woman has her face, not it isn't her.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. Like, I don't know yet if that's actually true, because these are the mirrors. I don't know.
Good point.
And there's still the emotional connection, though, regardless of whether or not she actually is his mother or not. She still has the face, and he's still going to respond in that way. We've seen all the other doppelgangers do the same thing and seek out their loved ones who are gone from their other world too. Mm-hmm. So it's still going to be.
He's going to react either way.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if there's also like this thing where once the other person is killed off, like what happens to that kind of energy, because they feel interconnected, and like, are you a shell of a person if your other half is dead? I mean, we don't see that with the king, but like it raises these questions to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a part of you missing. Do you feel that, like the repercussions of that in our world?
Well, and if you're aware of it, if you're aware of your other half too, how does that change things when they're gone?
And it makes me interested in that concept of, that's very often explored in Asian dramas, where you definitely, almost everything's kind of written where there's going to be two versions of the same person if it's kind of a supernatural or fantastical bent, because they're like, I'm going to milk this as much as possible, whether it's somebody with amnesia or actually two different people, but like, or two different lives or whatever. And so what I kind of find interesting is that it's really setting up this idea, like, that when people inevitably die in this drama, because we know that's going to happen, whether they come back from death is a whole different story. We never know. It could be possible. This is, high level soap opera. People are going to tragically disappear or die or, sacrifice themselves for each other. Will you be satisfied with having a relationship with a different version of them as long as that person is still in your life?
Into the Spider-Verse, like
Absolutely.
what the Kingpin is trying to do in that.
Yeah.
That question
to bring someone back.
Yeah, that question is posed by that, which is really interesting. And like, it doesn't feel like the doppelgangers themselves are affected by the magic they're in. It's just the king and the uncle that are getting like that lightning effect happening. Like, he gets it on his face and Li Gong gets it on his back. There's some sort of price that is paid for having these things happen.
All magic has to come at a cost, otherwise why would it's an abuse of power.
Everyone would do it.
Yeah.
I did like that we get a little bit of the background on the flute. Not enough, but we got a little bit from Lady No to say, like, this is important, like, we need it back, and we don't have it. Okay, so we are halfway through the show. How are you both feeling?
I'll start with our guest, Caitlin. You have to tell us. I know that you've had your feelings.
I'm enjoying it. I definitely feel like this conversation has helped me enjoy it more. I think the first 4 episodes were a lot stronger than the 4 that we've come through, actually. I do think the pacing is kind of off in this show. It's kind of the thing that I think has held me back from loving it 100%. It's definitely not at Goblin status. I don't think it's like anywhere near Goblin. But like I said, when I come to dramas, I'm usually here like for the main couple. Like that's what I love about these shows. And it's weird because I'm not sure that the show has spent as much time with the lead couple. Really, like, to go from that one kiss and then 3 episodes later, she's like, well, I love you. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, that was
okay.
okay.
So some of the pacing is very
all you
odd.
have to do is never lie and have a very elaborate backstory.
Yeah, no, it kind of not rubbed me the wrong way, but it was like, oh, she really only started warming up to him once she found out he was a king. And I wish we'd had just a little bit more of that in before that happened, and we did, but I wanted just a little bit more of it before we actually got.
I have one argument against this.
Okay, go.
Time does not travel the same in the in between, and they literally spent like a month there.
I think, okay, yeah, I could be for that. So.
I mean, they spent time there, and they said time doesn't travel.
I maybe, but like to back up Caitlin here, like I think a lot of the reason why I'm so not invested in this primary couple, and I'm usually not invested in the primary couple, so this is fine for me, is that all of their sources of conflict are external. There is no internal conflict whatsoever keeping them apart, where that's usually what I look for in drama. I want angst. There's got to be some really heavy hitting reason why these two people can't be together. And it doesn't, if it's external, if it's about class differences, if it's about whatever, it's just like, no, you need to have that interpersonal growth, transformative part of the relationship where things change.
They already seem perfect for each other in many ways, and they aren't. Well,
that's kind of like the difference with like Crash Landing on You, is that show had me guessing the whole time of what a happy ending looks like for these two characters, and their like most of their conflict was obviously external. From North and South Korea, whereas this one is literally interdimensional, and it's still not as intense as I felt in Crash Landing on You. And I think a big piece of that is the fact that we talked about that there are just so many characters, because there's two of everyone, that we're really spending a lot of time there. But I almost think this show would have benefited from almost kind of zooming in more on Ligon and Taewol and how they're taking in all of this information from other people coming to them, rather than doing a lot of cutaways to these other groups in these other dimensions. And I like when shows do the big reveal relatively early on. Like, I was really happy that Taewol actually went to the Kingdom of Korea by like episode 3 or 4, because sometimes I think shows can really drag that kind of reveal out. But I was really glad that she went really early on. But she's just kind of rolling with the punches now, and when we pop in on them, they're doing great, and then we leave.
So everything's fine.
There isn't that conflict. I am with you on that.
So I'm looking for, I think the back half I'm hoping the back half is a lot more interesting now that I feel like we've been talking about, we've really laid the groundwork for what's coming with this battle, and getting more understanding of just what Lee Rim has been up to. Kind of forcing myself to shift focus, because usually I am here for the main couple. So now that we're in the weeds of the plot, I think it'll be a lot better in the last half. I'm hoping. Fingers are crossed.
And same.
I have one debate point against what you both said, which is that typically halfway through the couple is together, and then the tragedy hits. And then the tragedy hits, the twist.
Which is, we've got a voiceover already warning about that.
This is pretty standard, that they're like actually trying to make it work happy, and then the mother-in-law shows up and is like, actually, I have to send you away to your own private island, and you can never see my son again. Like, that's quite common, like where they need to be separated, or there's some sort of struggle and conflict that ends up pushing them.
It's very by the books, and I can see it coming a mile away. I just wish front-loaded wise, in terms of the conflict, a lot of their conflict was played off comedic, which is great. I love the comedy. It's very snappy, fun writing. But if I'm going, like, do I actively ship this? No. I mean, I'm just here for the ride. I'm watching it. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, do Nari and
like, do we have a 4-square ship here?
Yes, there is. There's gotta be. Please tell me. And I swear to God, one of the articles that I read and I highlighted it. It says unrequited love, and I don't know where they got that information from, but I am going to mail them a strongly worded letter because that
on
hurt.
The definition of unrequited.
Yeah, and it, like that's my pain. That's my pain. I always ship the never ever gonna be together, and that's probably why I'm like second lead syndrome in this. Like Shinjai and like Taeul is like, for me, has more chemistry and more dynamic kind of intent than
Yeah,
the
you
king,
brought them up earlier, and I wanted to say I think it would be really interesting if the king and her didn't end up together and those two ended up together. I was like, is that what they're doing? I know.
I hate childhood friends. You know me. I'm all about everything else. But
it made me question, because they have this great chemistry and they have, like, is that what they're going for? I don't, like, is he going to go and be like, no, I got to be duty king guy? And
I think he's going to sacrifice himself. And that's that kind of like sadness of that event is going to be, for me, the more memorable, more like, I love it. I want it.
Yeah.
They put them all in such interesting positions now. It's, I don't know. It's like, no, I don't think Taeul's gonna end up with Shinjae. Like, I think she should be with Lee Gon again. I'm always
absolutely
person. But they should have, and like Lee Gon and Taeul have such great chemistry, and like the writing is so snappy between them, and that like sarcasm and her calling him by his real name, like it's all so flirty. Like, I really like those moments, but they feel so few and far between that then bringing that all together for her to, in episode 8, to be like, I love you. I was like,
oh.
Okay.
You felt like you were missing part of the meal. Like you went from the appetizer to the dessert.
But they planted seeds together.
In a flashback, Marie Claire, in a flashback.
Yeah.
I know. I feel you. I'm okay with it because, like, I'm interested by the concepts that have been introduced by this show. That's where my brain is like,
same.
What is going on in this show? And okay, romance. I'm happy. Cool. But no, typically with shows, I like that there is a dynamic that they need to both grow and move past. And that is not what we are experiencing with our OTP, our off lead, and her. We are experiencing that with, and we are experiencing that with our secondary OTP. So
yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of think that Jo Young is going to be the one who sacrifices himself at the end of this show.
You're right. It's probably true. And I don't want that to be true.
I'm going to be really sad because I'm
going to be sad. I don't want that to happen.
I just expect everything I love to die. So
yeah. Well, we've been conditioned.
We've been conditioned.
And this has been Sad Hours on What the Fiction.
No, I'm beyond that stage of grief into resignation and acceptance. So we're okay. It's fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you both ladies for joining me to talk about episodes 5 through 8. We are looking forward to the second half of this show, so we will have 2 more of these live streams to talk about everything, and maybe we'll grab back Caitlin to do a big roundtable for the last 4.
Yes, please.
And
please
she's
come
like,
back.
she's on like call if we need you. But you're so smart.
I'm literally not going anywhere. So.
I mean, like, yeah. What is time? This question and our lives asks.
So this show is actually very appropriate for
very appropriate.
We are the eternal monarch, but we don't have a kingdom.
Yay!
Exactly.
That we know of.
No. Ooh, if it is the universe, I probably have a much more successful and reasonable life in the other world. Watch me like considering, would I kill my doppelganger to get out of the situation?
Maybe.
No. But hopefully there's a hot bodyguard of a king over there that I'm lusting after just as much as I would in this one. So
yeah, same, honestly.
I don't know how to react to that. So moving on. Caitlin, where can people find you if they're looking for you and all of the wonderful things that you do?
Yes, so I am on Twitter with everyone else. I'm at Caitlin Plusher, just my name, and I'm also on Sky Talker's podcast to talk about Star Wars, and that's pretty much where you can find me all the damn time. So,
and top-rated Star Wars podcasts.
Yes,
congratulations to you both. I'm going to do that on air.
Yeah, to MC, of course.
I can't believe it still. And Nat, where can people find you and what you're all about and what you're up to?
Oh gosh, you can follow my Twitter at Ashes for Foxes if you want really infrequent news as I play Animal Crossing and cry into my, no, I'm just kidding. I am the podcast host of Metamachina, that's spelled METAMASHINA. We are coming back after a long hiatus, and it's a very welcome return. Our new episodes will drop at the beginning of June, and then we will continue to discuss fem-gaze in fiction. And I know that I really owe Marie Claire for the opportunity to come back and talk about this, but this is my agenda and drive for the rest of my life, is just to kind of prop media that doesn't speak down to and includes women as creators. So yeah, including Maximus, who is a woman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Arguably the best part of the show.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. You can follow me at Marie C. Gould on Twitter, and I post about this stuff. And I got a lot of cool plans coming up for what it's all going to be about for the rest of this year, especially since we need to talk about fiction. It's important. So thanks, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks, especially thanks, chat. I've been following you guys. Amazing.